The killing of a patriot in Portland may indeed spark a civil war, all as outraged voters turn against the Democrats. In this video, we're going to take a look at the circumstances surrounding the murder of a pro-Trump patriot over the weekend in the chaotic city of Portland, why some pundits are concerned this may indeed escalate into a civil war, and how voters have begun to abandon the Democrats in droves as they put the blame for this social unrest squarely on the side of the political left. You're not going to want to miss this. Greetings, everyone. Dr. Steve here with you. Great to be with you as always. If this is your first time here at this channel, I post 2 videos a day analyzing current events, analyze some super awesome conservative trends so we can all live in the present light of even better things to come. So if you haven't already done so, you know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. It'd be an absolute privilege to have you as a regular part of this channel, where each and every day we together celebrate the collapse of left-wing globalism and the unstoppable rise of a new conservative age. But first, before you do anything else, make sure to click on that link below and head on over to my special website for my Patriot food supply. As we saw with the whole pandemic insanity, we cannot wait for an emergency to happen before we respond to one. And no one makes preparing for an emergency more ridiculously easy and affordable than my Patriot Supply. Gang, they are simply the best. Their food kits last up to 25 years in storage. They include breakfasts, lunches, and dinners. And best of all, they've got a guarantee policy that will knock your socks off. And if you act now, you can save $100 off a full 4-week emergency food supply when you click on the link below to my special website. You heard that right, $100 off, so do not wait. I've got my food supply. Make sure you get yours. Click on that link below or go to preparewithsteve.com and save $100 off your very own 4-week emergency food supply today. All right, gang, let's dive right in here. Wow, this weekend we saw events happen in Portland that may indeed have crossed the line, meaning that we may be looking at consequences that are at this point irreversible. As I'm sure many of you know by now, this weekend, thousands of patriots came to Portland to stand in the gap of the feckless and failed mayor who has deliberately abdicated his law enforcement duties over the last several weeks of chaos that's overrun the city of Portland. And that stand, unfortunately, turned deadly. One of the patriots, a conservative Trump supporter, was shot and killed in cold blood on Saturday. Tim Pool went a step further. I mean, he came out and just said bluntly that this Trump supporter was flat out executed. He was blatantly executed. The victim has been identified as a Patriot Prayer supporter by the name of Aaron Danielson, who went by the nickname Jay Bishop. And President Trump, in fact, tweeted out his support and his condolences for him, writing, "Rest in peace, Jay." A suspect in the shooting has also been identified. He is an Antifa radical by the name of Michael Ryanol. He was reported to having yelled out, "We've got a Trump supporter here," before 2 gunshots rang out and Jay lay dying. So as of the making of this video, he's still at large. Now, needless to say, the far left, particularly on Twitter, announced their support in celebration of the murder. In fact, one BLM activist could be heard on site in Portland declaring to a crowd through her blowhorn, "I just got word that the person who died was a Patriot Prayer Trump person. He was an effing Nazi. Our community held its own and took out the trash. I'm not going to shed any tears over a Nazi." Now, that's about as dehumanizing of language that you can get. If the left has profiled you in a particular way, we now know that your life is no longer sacred. It's no longer worthy, and your death is not worthy to be mourned. I mean, this is serious stuff, gang. It really doesn't get more provocative and more escalatory than this. And that is why we are now seeing pundits publicly coming out and saying it really does look like we're entering into a civil war. Now, I'm thinking in particular of a piece in the Philadelphia Inquirer by a fellow by the name of Will Bunch, who sees the events over the weekend as shifting into overdrive what he considers President Trump's scheme to get reelected by instigating a civil war in our nation. So obviously this is another left-wing activist disguised as a journalist. So there are a dime a dozen today. But at least he recognizes, I think he understands what's happening to our nation, at least in microcosm, when it comes to the chaos overrunning our left-wing city of Portland here. Needless to say, it's a hysterical piece. This fellow likens the patriots that are standing in the gap, again, to this feckless and failed mayor of Portland. He likens them to the Taliban launching a jihad. This is what passes for journalism today. According to this so-called journalist, Portland is an American city where peaceful protests, boy, we hear that phrase a lot, don't we? Forget the fact that CNN's Chris Cuomo asked rhetorically, whoever said that protests were supposed to be peaceful, right? But he writes that Portland is an American city where peaceful protests for racial justice are often overshadowed by extremists, get this, of the far right. Extremists from the far freaking right, overshadow peaceful protests for racial justice. Now, he does add, and the far left, but it's just hilarious that after what we've seen over the last 3 months, he would have the gall to give priority to the far right over and against blaming the far left. It's beyond comprehension, but nevertheless, he does recognize that this is a significant escalation in the tensions between, I would argue it's not so much between the left versus right, but more between social justice warriors and woke agitators on the one hand, who hate our nation, its history, its traditions, its culture, its customs, and patriots who love their nation and history and traditions and culture and want to save our nation. And indeed, it's looking more and more like the exurb versus urban civil war in the making. Now, again, conspiracy theories aside, this guy thinks this is all a ploy for Trump to get reelected, that Trump and the Republicans are actively celebrating vigilantism. Now, he, of course, omits the fact that Democrat-dominated city councils like the one in Seattle actually threatened their mayor, Durkin, with impeachment if she didn't side with the rioters and protesters and looters. The city council is so far left, they are so filled with Marxist revolutionary fervor that they had the gall of threatening the mayor with impeachment if she actually tried to enforce the law. So I don't know what this Philadelphia Inquirer fellow's talking about in terms of Republicans supporting vigilantism. They support law and order, they support the police, they support law enforcement, and they support patriots. But this attempt at trying to blame Trump for the riots is clearly the new mantra among Democrats. They failed. They completely and incompetently floundering Mayor of Portland, Ted Wheeler, even though he continues to reject President Trump's offer to send in federal agents to restore order to really what has become nothing short of an insurrection in Portland. He then had the gall over the weekend to actually turn around and blame President Trump for the riots. Now, keep in mind, I didn't even know these were riots. Right? CNN called them fiery but mostly peaceful protests, right? We did a video on that last week on their Chiron. Fiery but mostly peaceful protests. That reminds me, we've got a great gift for you. It is called our Fake News Antidote. It's a compilation of about 20 different news sites that I go to for my news each and every day, and you can download it completely free at the link down below in the pinned comments section. I really think you're going to absolutely love it in terms of the resource. If you're looking for alternative news sources that celebrate the rise of a new conservative age all over the world, these are a list of your 20 go-to sites that you'll definitely enjoy, and it's absolutely free by clicking on the link below. It's my gift to you. But at least now leftists like Wheeler and this guy at the Philadelphia Inquirer, at least they're admitting now that these are riots. But funny thing, they're only riots once patriots got involved. Isn't that interesting? And then Joe Biden, too, he tried to remind everyone that he's actually still alive in his basement by saying that Trump incited conditions that led to the shooting death of this patriot. Yeah, I'm sure you're all aware. Biden's campaign is imploding. It was without any sense of exaggeration. It was by far the dumbest campaign strategy I've ever witnessed in my life, and it's all backfiring. We'll get into it in our next video today. Make sure to check it out. But Biden's campaign is on life support right now. I mean, it's almost hard to watch at this point. It's so dramatically imploding, but nevertheless. What Biden and Wheeler are finally doing here in trying to blame Trump is not just admitting that these are riots, they're actually panicking. That's what they're actually doing. They're openly panicking. And they're panicking because every single poll out there shows that Americans have begun to turn on the Democrats. Voters are blaming the Democrats for the social unrest that has plagued our nation uninterrupted over the last 3 months, as they should. And that's because of the completely unprecedented, intentional dereliction of law enforcement duties by Democrat politicians. And that's the key. Every single Democrat mayor and governor intentionally forfeited their legal obligation to protect the citizens under their jurisdiction. We have to remember that what made these race riots so absolutely unprecedented is that Democrat politicians have willfully and deliberately abdicated their law enforcement responsibilities and publicly sided with the rioters and the looters. The infuriating frustration, the utter disgust that patriots have collectively experienced over the last several weeks stems from the fact that amid the mass looting and violence, a litany of governors, a litany of mayors, all Democrats, refuse to do anything about it. That's why militias are in the cities right now. It's not because of Donald Trump. It's because as hysterical mobs toppled historical monuments across the nation, Democrat lawmakers explicitly and publicly sided with lawbreakers, throwing law enforcement under the bus. Again, CNN's Fredo Cuomo amplified this. Whoever said that protests were supposed to be peaceful? Who said that? That the face mask and social distancing protocols that were considered absolutely non-negotiable by these tyrannical leftist governors just a few weeks prior were all of a sudden just arbitrarily thrown away, just waved away by those same leftist governors so as to celebrate and encourage a supposedly new wave of wokeness flooding our nation, somehow guaranteeing the Democrats sweeping back into power in November. But as we're finding with every new poll that's coming out now, voters are leaving the Democrats in droves. Voters want nothing to do with this new wave of wokeness. And while they may not be the biggest Trump fans, they see him and the Republicans as the only ones standing between us and the hysterical lunatic left. But that's only partly right. It's not just Trump and the Republicans. It's also these brave patriots who are rising up and standing in the gap of these feckless and failed Democrat mayors to defend what's right and what's good and noble about our nation, to defend innocent and law-abiding citizens in our cities and our urban neighborhoods that are the primary victims of this social insanity. These are the true heroes in all of this, as they're being disparaged and denigrated by privileged and pampered leftists on our streets and in the mainstream media. They're doing what's right. They're defending the good, and we all owe them our profound and heartfelt gratitude. Now, before you go, make sure to like this video, comment down below, and subscribe to my channel. And you will definitely want to check out my latest video I just uploaded on President Trump officially becoming the new frontrunner as the Democratic Party has begun to implode. You're not going to want to miss it. And I get through it. I don't crack up the whole time, I promise. So make sure to click on the link, and I'll see you over there. God bless.